Welcome back, brothers, tourists, and ladies, to another episode of The Chapter House, the Old Glory Club's look into the individual chapters that make up the Old Glory Club. Thank you for joining us tonight on this, the busiest bar night of the year. If you're listening to the recording, you are obviously not as dedicated as the people who catch it live, so you should feel bad. And joining us tonight is the Northern Texas chapter, the Blackland Prairie Riders out of Dallas. And representing the Blackland Prairie Riders is Bungo Man. How are you, sir?
I think you're muted, Bungo Man.
I can't hear Curtis.
Oh, how about that? Well, Bungo Man's going to have to refresh and reconnect. But our other representative is Disco Cadillac. How are you, sir?
Very, very good, and with no technical difficulties, thank God.
Perfect. Since Bungo Man cannot hear, it looks like he did. Perfect. He'll be back in a second. Anyway, the Blackland Prairie Riders, not the Black Prairie Raiders, like I said last week during the outro. So I mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. But Disco, the question that is on my mind and that I know is on everyone's mind is why does the Pegasus in your chapter flag look so very familiar?
Oh, well, I will tell you, the Mercantile Building in downtown Dallas, that was previously owned by, I forget the name of the company, you probably do. It was that oil company that used the Pegasus logo. And they basically designed a what do you call it, neon sign to go on top of that building. So
it's a Dallas landmark.
you could say it. It's we don't have too many landmarks, so we got to make do with what we got, you know.
Can you hear me now?
Well, I mean,
very well.
Oh, we can.
Oh, finally.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can finally. Sorry about that. Yeah, the sign was on the top of the Magnolia Oil Building, which for a while was the largest building in Dallas.
Yeah, I was wondering because I remember old mobile gas stations had that had that exact same Pegasus, and I was wondering, are we gonna get sued over that?
I hope not. I believe that Magnolia Oil got bought by or was folded into Mobil at some point, or they changed their name. So there is a relation there.
Well, that's okay. From my very brief and slipshod research, it looks like that was trademarked in 1931. So I imagine that means it's in the public domain by this point. So get wrecked, Mobil. I don't know what else to tell you. So Dallas, how long have you guys been a chapter?
Since about March of this year. We first incorporated in December of last year, but it took a minute for us to get approved and everything.
So I might be speaking out of turn here, and I'm sure I'll catch hell for it if I am. But I think that you guys are our first like major metropolitan chapter. When you guys incorporated, did you have just the 5 members that are required to form a chapter, or did you already have like a larger cadre?
We already had a group of probably about 10 guys, I would say, who were fairly regularly showing up to meetups. Thanks to one of our guys from Central. I don't know if he wants us to name drop him. But yeah, we kind of chose, the 5 people who would be part of the founding documents and everything, and then over the course of a couple months, officially added everyone else who had been showing up. So we already had a pretty, I feel, sizable group of guys to begin with.
Well, that's great. I know that there's been some challenges in the organization getting people from major metropolitan areas involved. Mostly because I find that in the larger cities in the United States, the young men of good character who find themselves there are there for work. And usually that work takes up quite a bit of their time. What was it like pulling together those 10 guys? What are like the demographics? Are they older? Are they younger? Already established, or trying to kind of break into the scene?
It's funny you should say, it's metro areas tend to be for people who are you know there for work, because that's definitely, if I had to characterize Dallas, that's the reason why everyone is here. But the makeup of the group, the initial group, was, I'd say, late 20s, early 30s, kind of a mix of guys who are already pretty well into their career. I'm the oldest one by quite a bit. We've got a few guys who are in their early to mid 20s who are kind of just getting started. But yeah, a lot of us are recent transplants to Dallas, specifically because they were able to find a job here.
Yeah, and speaking on that, I was there since like the very, very first meeting with our unnamed OGC Central advisor, I guess you could say. And we went through probably like 20, 25 guys who like they'd show up for one or two meetings and then they'd sort of branch off and then they'd come back. And some of them never came back. But after, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 months, we finally got a core group of guys that were very, very dedicated and would go to just about any meeting anywhere in the Metroplex at almost any time. So it was a bit of I don't know if I'd say a struggle, because it really wasn't, but it took a bit of time to find the right people. But once we did, we knew when was the correct time to incorporate.
Well, that's very encouraging. It's good to hear that you guys had kind of a glut of applicants, and that not all of them panned out, because I know that in some areas of the country where the applicants are a little bit more sparse, there might be a kind of knee-jerk reaction to just accept anybody, which is not the purpose of this organization. So I applaud your guys' discernment when it comes to trying to choose the cream of the crop, and by that we don't just mean the thick and rich ones. So you guys started basically as like a millennial chapter. Everyone who started it was a millennial, from what I'm getting. But you guys have picked up a cadre of Zoomers.
Yeah, I think our youngest official member is only 22, and we've got a fair number of prospects who are in the pipeline, who are in their early to mid 20s, fresh out of college, maybe have had a job for a year or two.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we don't want to be obviously an organization of olds or unks, as the kids say. That we can leave that to Con Inc. But what do you guys what have you guys experienced from the, like, how is the culture? I know you're not yet a year old, but how has the culture kind of shifted from the core group of millennials to kind of incorporating these Zoomers? Did you notice a shift?
I wouldn't really say so. Disco, would you say there's been any real shift in the culture? I feel like it's been pretty consistent, which is, to me, a good thing.
Yeah, because I mean, like, and this is sort of the reason behind my whole online name is I feel like I am sort of a bit of an old soul. I'm personally about 24 years old, and all the friends my age they either kind of act a little bit older, not to say like they act mature, but they act like millennials do, or they're very brain rotted, so to speak. So there's that. But I would want to say that between the Zoomers and the millennials, there's just sort of a unified, not just like understanding of America, but also like understanding of personality and interpersonal relationships that I think actually kind of goes beyond the whole generational divide thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I can see there being, people lament that, especially people on our side, lament the death of subcultures, because the internet kind of provided this, well, you can be anyone and like anything, and you don't have to become a part of a subculture to get exposure to it anymore, the way that Gen X and early millennials had to. But I can also see that being a great boon when it comes to the generational divide between millennials and Zoomers kind of blurring, since those of us who are terminally online all get exposed to the same kind of politics. So you found that there hasn't really been much of a communications gap between the older guys and the younger.
I wouldn't say so. And we actually have a couple of Gen X guys in the pipeline who, from what I can tell, seem to get it. What Disco was saying about kind of having a shared vision of America is, I think that's something we explicitly look for when we bring people on. We try and really probe what they think about what an American is, and a positive vision for the future. And I think having everyone kind of share that baseline, I think really smooths over any of those other kind of differences that might arise because of different experiences due to our age.
Yeah, I think that's a very good thing to talk about, because when we interview people for this chapter, in many cases, we're just sort of listing just a bunch of topics and sort of seeing what they know about them. It's not even really about knowing the correct answer for, Italian elite theory and all that stuff. It's just more about understanding of the world, and just sort of like, do we feel like we can have an intelligent conversation with you, or do we feel like you're not a grifter per se, but more in this simply for the appearances, for the aesthetic, rather than for the actual meat of the thing?
Yeah, people who are serious about it. And like you were saying, you don't necessarily have to be an academic or a nerd, just to get into what it is that the Old Glory Club cares about. But one of the things that I think might help is, Disco, your profile picture, from what I can tell, is the with a car you can go anywhere guy
Yeah.
fueling up a Cadillac that you are driving. Uh, do you present this to your Zoomers and say, do you know what this meme means?
Yes, they all get it instantaneously, thankfully. So even though there's mixtures of like old and new with the you can drive anywhere, but then you got John Travolta in the driver's seat, it's a mixture of many, many different eras. But like, all my younger friends, they get it.
I mean, that's perfect. If nothing can bridge the generational divide, memes can do exactly that. And Bungo Man, is yours the guy from The Wire dressed up as a football player, or is this something I'm just not recognizing?
It's terrible Terry Tate, office linebacker.
Of course, you're supposed to put a cover sheet on your TPS report, Richard. Yes, I recall.
It's actually a picture. So the guy who played Terry Tate, Lester Spieth was his name. He was played football in college and was briefly an actor. Do you remember the I think it was 2004 special governor's election in California?
No, in 2004 I was in high school, and all I cared about was girls. So,
so I think that's the election where Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected. But the guy who played Terry Tate ran for governor, and so this picture is from the landing page from his website for his campaign, and I've been using it ever since.
All right,
that's some deep Bungo Man lore.
So that meme may be too millennial coded to bridge the generational divide, but
very few people get it.
Either way, I do very much appreciate it. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys have a strong Zoomer presence. The Boomerwaffen ended up being quite a disappointment in the long run. So here's hoping the Zoomerwaffen can make up for their predecessors' lacking. But you guys wanted to discuss a little bit about Dallas history, which I'd love to get into. But before we do that, you'd also mentioned that Dallas is a place of transients, which, if we're being honest, is the case for all major U.S. cities in the United States. People come to get a job, they come to make money, and then, most of them will leave, and the ones who get trapped there end up sticking around. So you're saying Dallas is about the same thing?
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm here. Not so much for myself, but when my parents moved here in the '90s, it was because it was really the only place in the country at the time that my dad could get a job. And that's tends to be the story for a lot of people, is like, well, why are you here? And it's because I looked around and this was really the only place where there were people who were hiring. And you're not wrong that that's the case in pretty much every major metro area. I mean, I imagine New York is probably pretty similar. But I think there's in places like New York or LA, there's sort of like a almost mythical draw to places like that, where like maybe you're going there because you want to find work, but there's like something else kind of motivating that. And I think in Dallas it tends to be purely economic. It's simply, this is where I can find a job, and it's probably not where you want to live necessarily. The scenery here isn't great. It was the bottom of an ocean for a really long time, which means it's pretty flat and boring. The weather alternates between okay and terrible. But you can find pretty good jobs here, and so the city just keeps growing.
Yeah, when I try to think of the Dallas skyline in my head, it doesn't really, like, I've seen pictures of Dallas. I've never been there, but I can't recall. There's nothing that kind of stands out about the Dallas skyline. It just kind of seems like a bunch of stacked skyscrapers in the middle of the desert. Now, this might be unkind, but is that a fair assessment? Or
I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. I think Dallas has a beautiful skyline, actually. You'll notice usually on most of the pictures off to the side, there's a little tower with a ball on it, and that's Reunion Tower. And there's like a little restaurant that revolves around inside the ball. It's pretty neat. Go ahead.
And speaking of Reunion Tower, this is getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but the reason why it was named that is because in the 1850s, there was a utopian French socialist, what would you call it, commune, that was founded west of Dallas, and it only lasted 3 years for obvious reasons. So a lot of those people moved to Dallas, which at that time was a very small settlement. And one of the guys, his last name was Considerant, he became like a very, very popular merchant in the city.
all right, so it was founded on commercialism. But before we dive into the history of Dallas, I got one more question for you. Has Dallas been overrun by the Jeep Menace?
You have
Yes.
no idea. I'll let you field that one, since you're a little further north than I am, and I know it gets considerably worse the further north you go.
Oh yeah, it's I'll just sort of give you the quick lowdown. You basically have Dallas, north of it, Richardson, Plano, Frisco, Salina. Richardson and Plano are fine. Those are sort of established communities. Frisco got really bad post 2013, 2014. And Salina itself, I have personally delivered packages in the past to some new build communities in Salina. I cannot state this deeply enough, and I'm not over exaggerating at all. When I was delivering packages to some of these neighborhoods, I had to go probably 20, 30 packages before I found a name that was not Indian. When I say that place is like ethnically homogenous, it is, I'm not over exaggerating at all. It's really, really rough.
Yeah, there are elementary schools in Frisco that are, I believe, upwards of 85 to 90% Indian.
Yeah.
At this point, there's been a massive influx up there. something like probably close to 40% of the population. And it's not a small town. I think there's almost a couple hundred, maybe even 250,000 people there.
Give or take. But I will say this, to our benefit, I have talked with a lot of my normie friends up in places like Frisco and a bit in Salina. A lot of these guys that are not in any way sympathetic to what we believe, even they will like privately tell me, you know, we're not in a public area, like, yeah, there actually are too many here. Like it's a little bit ridiculous. And these are the guys that believe in like diversity and stuff like that.
So this is the kind of thing. Has it changed the face of Dallas? I know that Texas is home to, or at least I believe Texas is home to one of the demon god statues. Is this correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I believe that's north of Houston.
All
I
right,
will
so
say-
they haven't built them near Dallas yet.
There are some pretty large Hindu temples in the DFW area, just off the George Bush Expressway. There's a very, very large one.
Yeah, and I can speak to a few large ones in Frisco. They have very much changed the face of Dallas in so many different ways. There's a lot of shopping centers now where you will find restaurants there that aren't even just like Indian names, but they are literally in their like scribbly language of symbols and stuff. And also, from what I've been hearing from some guys here in the Republican Party, like they've been very clever in infiltrating local Republican politics to basically get their way, to get permits for all of their businesses and stuff like that, to get their temples approved. They have, to their credit, they have done a very, very good job at integrating themselves into our local politics and taking control.
Yeah, up in Plano and Prosper and in some of those towns, you'll see signs during the election seasons with all the candidates and everything on the side of the road. And in the last like 10 years, it's basically just all Indian names with the occasional like Korean name or something.
So what I'm hearing is that there just aren't any Heritage Americans that are actually running for office in that area.
It would seem that way. I'm obviously not too familiar with the politics of suburbs outside of my own, but yeah, it definitely seems that way. They're certainly not getting to the point where they're actually in the main election.
Yeah, speaking of the politicians, so many of them in these city council meetings, like the only thing they talk about is just like, we have this farm, we want it developed, here's the plan the developer came to us with. We're expecting 1,500 houses, this many businesses, blah, blah, blah. And then it's just like, okay, all in favor say yay, everybody says yay, nobody rejects. They're very economically minded and they're very passive. They're rubber stamps for many of these development companies. So really and truly, there's just no pushback right now, no heroic personalities.
Yeah, and to get somewhat in the history of Dallas, that's kind of been the case here, definitely for the last 100 years. I mean, obviously, once you go back, to the pioneering days, no one is really thinking about urban development or anything. But starting in the 1920s, there was a real, very strong push in Dallas and then in surrounding municipalities to err on the side of just bulldozing things and developing and tearing down older historic buildings and replacing them with high rises or apartment complexes. And one of the reasons we chose the name we did, or one of the reasons I really tried to push to include Blackland in our or Blackland Prairie in our name, is because that's the bioregion of this particular strip of North Texas. It's a tall grass prairie that extends from about the Gulf of America up into Missouri-ish. It's depending on how you define it. And it's so as a tall grass prairie, that means the native vegetation includes grasses that grow anywhere between 3 and about 15 feet in height, and the roots of those grasses go down real deep too. And the name comes from the soil in that bioregion, where it's currently now that we've ripped out all of the native grass and replaced it with St. Augustine and Bermuda and concrete. It's compacted into a real thick clay, whereas naturally it tends to be a nice kind of loamy material, with the interaction of the roots and the microbiome around them with the soil. And whenever I drive up north to visit my dad, he lives just about 40 minutes north of me. Every time a beautiful field has been replaced by just more apartments to be packed with Jeets, to be frank about it. And I've frankly liked it much better as a field. I think that the unspoiled prairie is, despite the flatness and boringness of it, still some of the most beautiful country there is, and there's vanishingly little of it left. I think something of like 99% of the Blackland Prairie has essentially been developed. And so, Disco's right. There's just this like constant need, that is trying to be satisfied for ever more housing and for more business complexes and stuff. And the result is I think we're losing something really important, and ultimately making a place that is less good for Americans.
Yeah, I think there's our good friend Carl Benjamin over at the Lotus Eaters. They refer to this as human battery farming. Just this idea of packing people into the cities to increase the GDP. Nobody's going to any office buildings or to any bars. Everybody just works from home. And so we're just building like these concrete boxes for people to live in, and just contribute to the tax base without any real flourishing being added to the area.
Yeah. Are there any movements within Texas to try to preserve some of the Blackland Prairie?
Not that I'm aware of. I know there is an organization that does run a small preserve up in Plano. It's called the Connemara. It's like an Irish name, so I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Nature preserve, and I think it's maybe about 10 or 15 acres, so it's not very big. And it's obviously it's surrounded by housing developments, but it's a really neat little place you can hike through, and see what just a small patch of unspoiled prairie looks like. But as far as a more widespread movement or anything, there's nothing that I'm aware of. I would certainly love to know.
So you guys had mentioned that Dallas originated as a place of commerce, and that everybody who ended up there was there because they were specifically looking for economic gain. And leaving aside the question of the great Jeet menace that has descended on the area, could you tell us about how Dallas kind of grew out of being how did it begin as a commerce hub?
Yeah, so it goes back to the early 1840s, well, really 1839. So a guy from Tennessee named John Neely Bryan made his way out to Arkansas, and then from there made his way up to an area along the Red River. There was a trading post called Coffee Station, and it was meant to be like a trading post, with the Indian tribes up in Oklahoma, and the very few that remained in North Texas at the time. And John Neely Bryan was a clerk for the guy who ran it, and he had heard about the region around the confluence of the Trinity River, and so in 1839 he and an Indian friend of his went down to the area that's now Dallas. He found a bluff overlooking the Trinity River, and he apparently knew instantly, like, this is it. This is I'm going to make something happen here. And so he came back a couple of years later. No one's really quite sure why it took him almost 2 years to make a return trip. But he came back with his horse and his dog and made a little lean-to, and then started, trying to get other people to move there. And so in the following spring, he managed to convince a couple of families from a place called Bird's Fort, which is about, I believe, 30-ish miles to the west of where downtown Dallas is now. And he convinced, in particular, the Beeman family, and he ended up marrying a daughter from that family. And from there, it grew pretty steadily. And it really took off in 1872 when two railroads kind of came in. One, the north-south one, was the Houston and Texas Central, and then there was the east-west one, the Texas and Pacific, and that really started to bring in a lot of people. But John Ailey Bryan's vision for it, was originally to be a trading post so he could trade with the Indians, because he had spent some time with them in his youth, and he spoke their language, some of their languages, and he was generally pretty knew how to be friendly with them. And a lot of the people that he attracted, were very early on, people who would the kind of people who would set up a general store in a town with 30 people. So it was very business minded right from the beginning.
So obviously that legacy persisted. Now I became aware of Dallas in my early 20s as a place that people were kind of flocking to for corporate jobs. Is that something that persisted throughout the 20th century, or did it have kind of a lull at some point?
So for a while, Dallas was, I believe, the largest manufacturer of saddles. That was a real big industry there. And then really, I think in the 1930s, oil became a big business around here. And then into the 1970s, there was semiconductor manufacturing, which is actually why my family moved here. Texas Instruments is located in Richardson, just north of Dallas, and there's some other semiconductor manufacturers here. So there's always kind of been relatively large industry here. There's a lot of banking and the mortgage industry sorts of things here. Dallas is kind of fared pretty well. When other cities have experienced recessions. I believe in the crash of 1893. Dallas wasn't affected too much by that. There wasn't a huge surge of unemployment. And during the recession, in 2008, it's not that we were untouched by it, but compared to some other places, we came off pretty light. So that's I think that as if it seems like I complain about the businessy nature of Dallas, in a lot of ways that it is kind of a good thing, because it means that there's actually quite a bit of stability here.
So do you find that a lot of the transplants to Dallas end up sticking around? Like people who have, obviously, Bungo Man, you mentioned that your father came in for work and that you obviously are still there. Is this a common story? Do people, once they get to Dallas, tend to stay in Dallas?
Yeah, I would say so. My story is not too unusual. Maybe not stick around for more than a few generations, but it's not uncommon, to find people who moved here in their youth and then their kids grow up there or whatever. Forgot what I was going with that.
I would kind of agree with that, because really and truly, speaking from a Zoomer's perspective, So many of my friends, basically all of their parents moved here probably about 15-ish years ago. And in just about all these cases, like none of them want to move to other places, not necessarily because like Dallas is so great, but just because like all the other options are so abysmal. If you look at something like LA or New York City, you got the crime, you got what I would see as like overpopulation, overcrowding, you know, just so many issues. And you look at Dallas and it's like, well, it doesn't really have anything going for it, but at the same time, like it's kind of stable and it's not really like that. One of the big benefits of being in Dallas is it's so spread apart, which many new urbanists would see as a downside. But the great thing about it is, quite frankly, that like you can avoid the bad neighborhoods really easily just based on the physical distance. So, you can always find a place in the Dallas area that accommodates you, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I'm also generally a fan of the sprawl here, as much as it sucks driving here. It really does make it pretty tolerable, I think. And even though like it's pretty common for people to stick around, or for there to be like second generation Dallasites, the population just has grown so rapidly that it always seems like a huge portion of the population here is a recent arrival, and that's definitely been the case for a very long time.
So you mentioned really briefly the traffic, and we've seen since ICE operations have picked up in both LA and Charlotte that once the illegals start to fear that they might get caught out, that they stop driving and traffic is alleviated. Do you have reason to believe that Dallas is in a similar situation?
Disco, I'll let you field that one. I've got some thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours.
Sure. For me, I really don't feel like it has done too much. And the reason why, from what I can tell, is like either A, they're emboldened, or B, there's so many legal ones here, so to speak, that it just doesn't have much of an effect when I'm driving on the highway. I will say this. I was in downtown Dallas probably 3-4 months ago to go to the art museum. And in the middle of downtown, they had these like ICE protesters, and they were all over the place waving the Mexican flag and all that stuff. Apparently later that night, they like took over one of the bridges going across the Trinity River and like stopped all traffic in the middle of their chaos. So I think I get the impression that it's sort of a combination of both, them being emboldened and also there just being like so many illegal ones that they really don't care and they have no reason to, I guess, be fearful, so to speak.
Yeah, we have a lot of what we like to call student drivers here, which so the Indians in this area, and I don't know if this is true elsewhere in the country. I know this happens down in Houston. I have it on good authority. They will put up placards or on the back windshield of their car that just say "student driver," or they'll put a bumper sticker on their car that says "student driver." And then they will drive like someone who absolutely did not learn to drive here. Yeah. So I would say no, traffic hasn't really improved. However, one thing I have noticed that has gone away is there used to be briefly for about a year or so some sort of like I guess you'd say like pop-up tent stalls on the side of the road where people were selling things like t-shirts and bouquets of flowers and stuff, just like in a parking lot of a supermarket, and there'd just be like a dozen of these. And since ICE really started to get going, those have disappeared, which is nice because they really kind of jumped it up.
Well, that's interesting. So I imagine that the reason that traffic was alleviated in LA temporarily and in Charlotte was because of direct, like heavy action by ICE that was highly publicized. Now, I don't recall that anything of the sort happened in Dallas. Is this accurate?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything to anywhere near the degree of what we saw in LA or Charlotte. It sure would be nice. There's always kind of been a, this is Texas, so there's always been a large amount of people from south of the border here. I won't say always, because the presence of Mexicans here is actually somewhat overblown. When you hear particular libs talk about it, there really weren't that many until probably the 1920s. But it's in my lifetime, certainly. It's always been a certainly double-digit % of the population. But I think in terms of things that have noticeably degraded the traffic, and just general experience going out and about around town, I think the legal immigration has been far worse for us. Most of the illegal Mexicans here, and it's mostly Mexicans, but there are people from like Honduras and El Salvador and whatnot. They tend to stick to their own neighborhoods, and it's their presence is just because of the sprawl is much easier to avoid. But when you're talking about subcontinentals, they're coming into the nice neighborhoods, and it makes it much harder to avoid.
Yeah, I can speak a fair bit on that, because really and truly, like, to sort of just give like an ethnic breakdown of Dallas, it is very heavily self-segregated, in the sense that like South Dallas is very black, East and West is very heavily Hispanic, and the North side is basically the largely white portion. And of course, it's the large amounts of Indians that are moving into that northern white portion, which are really driving up the already starting to get absurd house prices.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be a pattern all over the country. I mean, even places like Leesburg, Virginia, have a huge amount of Hondurans. But you mentioned the stalls. I don't know if you guys have seen this in Dallas, but around New York City, coming into and going out of the city, there are obviously freeways, but Manhattan's an island, and you have to go over quite a great deal of bridges. But on those bridges, you will find individuals with little, like, I don't know what you even call them, like these little placards that act as like trays. These little trays that they sling around their neck, selling like slices of mango or flowers in the middle of rush hour traffic. Is that something you guys have seen in Dallas so far?
Not the trays. However, we do get it's almost exclusively women selling bouquets of flowers at intersections, and those are actually kind of depressing, because it's almost certainly a woman who has been trafficked and then forced into selling the flowers, which is like obviously not the worst thing in the world, but typically how that works is they are forced to pay up front to whoever's providing the flowers for the supply for the day, and then they have to sell them or they lose their money, and they sort of end up in this like debt trap with them, and it's a really pernicious thing. But that's in terms of people selling things directly on the street, that's really all I've ever seen is that.
Well, hopefully Dallas never gets quite as bad as some of our other urban areas. But enough of the doomerisms. Guys, the Blackland Prairie Riders, what have you guys been getting into since you formed, what was this, 9 months ago? Do you have any feathers in your cap yet, or are you still working on that?
Yeah, so we had a barbecue this summer. Had about, I think, 35 people show up to that, which was great. That was a lot of fun. Made burgers and hot dogs. We've been on a couple of hikes. There's not a lot of really great hiking in Dallas. There is a place called Cedar Hill just to the south of Dallas, and it's probably really the only hilly area for several hundred miles. But it's beautiful out there, and we've gone on some hikes there, and we have a Christmas dinner coming up real soon, which will, hopefully will go pretty well.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well,
Oh, sure, God.
no, I was just gonna say that sounds like a pretty good time. So with the barbecue and the Christmas dinner, how did you guys put that together? Was it something that was internal? Did somebody volunteer for it? Was somebody voluntold that they had to host this?
So the barbecue was actually took several months to really plan out. Which was kind of surprising in hindsight, but had to find a place that could accommodate all of us that was outdoors. So we ended up renting a pavilion at a local park, which was great. And then no, we actually had several people volunteer to pick up food and help with the cooking and everything. And those guys are now on the event planning committee. They kind of did get voluntold for that. So for future events, they're definitely a part of that, which I think has been working out pretty well. You can just do things, but you can also just tell people to do things.
Yeah, and speaking of our upcoming Christmas one, that one has taken a lot of planning. I'm sure you can speak a lot more on that, Bungo Man, but reserving an actual restaurant, it turns out that that's a lot more difficult than just making a phone call.
Yeah, it's fortunately where we the venue we've secured is pretty easy to work with. But yeah, finding something that is willing and able to host an event for us is took quite a bit of searching. Cost is also a factor there, because we don't we need a lot more money if we're going to do anything really fancy. But that's I think with the help that that I and the event planning committee have gotten with this, it's been not terribly difficult, which is good. We'll see. It still hasn't happened yet, but I think what we're really trying to do, though, and we went into the barbecue explicitly with this in mind, was building up our capacity to plan and carry out these sorts of things. Where we started off with a barbecue that was free for everyone who attended, and just was a few $100s worth of meat, and we've worked our way up to something that involves tickets. So we had to figure out the logistics of doing ticket sales, which is actually not terribly easy, because we had to figure out the logistics of a bank account and all that stuff, because we wanted to make sure we were doing it all above board and legit and everything. And so hopefully, I can't promise or say anything yet, but hopefully next year we'll be able to do something along the lines of the East Coast Forum down here. That's kind of the goal. We'll see. That's going to require quite a bit more planning, but I think the way we've approached this as doing just ever increasingly more complex events is the way to do it, since none of us really have any kind of experience doing that. So we have to get it.
Yeah, and that's very inspiring. I didn't know that you guys have been putting on things that were quite so large. The Southern Forum sounds like something that we would absolutely love to see. So please, if you decide to pull the trigger on that, make sure you reach out to your regional liaison and see what help you can get from Central. But I had a question for you about now, this is something that not every chapter does, but some chapters do. Have you guys requested dues from your members?
We have not. That's something we've thought about. Really figuring out the bank account was kind of the biggest hurdle to anything about that. And that's I may be jumping ahead, to the words of wisdom here. But if there's one thing I would say to any chapters, who are really starting to figure things out, is figure out the money stuff early on, because if you're going to do anything more complicated than a barbecue, it's going to require hundreds or thousands of dollars. And if you're handling that amount of money, I personally feel it's extremely important to be fastidious in accounting for it, because you want to be a good steward of any money that you do take in from your membership. And hopefully in the future we'll have a not onerous amount of dues. That's I don't think that's a surprise to any of our membership. We've all kind of agreed that at some point we're going to have to do that, because simply selling event tickets isn't going to be enough to fund anything particularly large. But really squaring away, like, who's in charge of the money and how you're going to handle it, and figuring that out early on, I think is really important, because just anything we do here that's big is going to need money, and you want to do that part right for a lot of reasons.
So get yourselves a good treasurer. Now, I'm really kind of shifting gears back to something that is like much earlier in the conversation, but it was something I wanted to ask about. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2015, one of the first big BLM actions occurred, I believe, in Dallas, where one of their members started opening fire on the local police.
Yeah, that was crazy. I can't remember that guy's name, but they DPD like blew him up with like a remote bomb or something, like a grenade strapped to a robot, or I don't remember the details, but yeah, it was some crazy BLM guy like just started shooting at Dallas cops.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, the guy. Oh, go ahead. No problem.
Disco, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the story with that guy, DPD, they thought he was a part of a group, interestingly enough, which is why they sent the bomb in. They believed that him and his group had booby-trapped the hallway leading to the room that he was pulled up in. And so they believed that, they'd be wasting the lives of additional officers by trying to breach into that thing. So they attached C2 to a robot rover-looking thing and drove it right in there and blew him up.
Yeah, I remember the video of him killing those police officers was quite visceral, and it was my first exposure to the Black Lives Matter movement. And obviously, since then, it has taken on many forms and has suffered from the usual race grifters making off with a lot of their money. But that led me to this question. What is the political scene on the ground in Dallas like? Have you guys been seeing a lot of disruptive protests in the area? Not just like the boomers standing on the side of the road with their ridiculous signs, but like people making trouble.
Yeah, Antifa is very active here, surprisingly enough. There was not too long ago, maybe a month or two ago, some kid that tried to snipe at an ICE convoy, and he later ended up killing himself. Additionally, I think you guys did cover the Allen ICE facility shooting. Well, a third of the members who were present at that, they were from the Dallas area, specifically a group called the Elm Fork John Brown Gun Club, which from what I can tell seems to be very active in the Denton area, which is a bit northwest of Dallas.
Yeah.
Interesting. You wouldn't think that, the what is it? Don't mess with Texas, or I know this doesn't really apply, but try that in a small town kind of implies that these sorts of things wouldn't happen in the South. But I suppose that this is a byproduct of Dallas having so many transients.
Yeah,
I can
I mean,
imagine.
yeah, Dallas has for quite a while been a pretty blue city. I think some of that goes back to the 1970s. Starting in the 1940s, there was a small organization called the Dallas Citizens Council that more or less ran local politics. There was a group of bankers and businessmen, people who had lots of money and means and everything, and they were had a pretty united front as far as how they ran things, and it was very business minded. And then kind of in the 1970s, I want to say it was 74, 75, there was a court case that changed how the city council was elected. And I believe it moved it from at-large districts to or at-large elections to kind of district elections, and that really allowed for districts that were historically black and Latino to have their own council members. And that really changed Dallas politics by the early 90s, I'd say. And since then it's been pretty blue. And so you've seen like everywhere else in the country where you have blue cities are pretty lenient on that sort of thing. There was in 2020 there were of course quite a few protests here, and there were even some where they blocked off some of the bridges over the Trinity River, and a lot of those people got arrested, but nothing happened to them. There was no one was convicted of anything. They were basically just brought in and then let go, and that's pretty standard for how that kind of stuff goes around here.
So, like many major metropolitan areas, you guys have a blue mayor and DA.
Definitely for the district attorney. I think our current mayor might have actually switched to being a Republican. Don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure. You never hear about the mayor of Dallas, the current mayor. He's been basically MIA for several years now.
Truly amazing stuff, but it does drive home the need to think about security for any events that any of our brothers do. While the Old Glory Club is not a political organization and is explicitly not a political organization, any group of men who care about America and her history is going to be a target for the lunatics on the left side of the fence, such as that means anything. But it is a good thing to keep in mind that even in Texas, this kind of rot has taken hold. We're getting kind of late in the hour, so I'm going to move real quick over to the super chats. Christopher Burks 458 with $2 dues sends us a salute. Well, salute to you, sir. Always good to see you in the audience. Denton BC sends us $5 with no message. Thank you, Mr. BC. Don Browning, our favorite lass from down under, or bird, I suppose, as they would say, sends us 10 Australian dollars with a super sticker of an anthropomorphic hippo who turns his ball cap backwards and gives a thumbs up while smiling. Well, thank you, Don Browning, for being our strongest soldier in the far reaches of the Anglosphere. But guys, that wraps up the super chats. And Bungaman, looks like, oh, sorry, I for some reason missed the message that Denton sent us, or he sent it again for another $5. The Dallas mayor is only a figurehead because of weak mayor council system. The The city manager is where the power is. Good Old Glory Club, good old Glory Club night. Good night to you as well, sir. Bungaman, Disco. What do you guys think about the city council comment that he?
Yeah, that's been true for a while, and that actually kind of goes back to the Dallas Citizens Council. That was kind of an outgrowth of the planning for the Texas Centennial, and sort of previous to that, there was another organization that really pushed for that change, specifically to make it so the city council and the mayor wouldn't necessarily have direct authority. It was, like I said, it was kind of a group of bankers and businessmen who, they really wanted to, to frame it positively, wanted to foster an environment that was good for business. And so having it to where, the actual decisions on how the city is run, not being in the hands of a directly elected official, was sort of how they did that. And that system has stuck around, for about 90 years now, I think.
Well, that is interesting that it could serve as a good case study for anybody who is interested in local politics. But to that end, and we're going to kind of go out of order here, if anyone wants to get a hold of the Black Prairie Riders, where's the best place they can find you?
The best place is our email. It's blacklandprairieriders@protonmail.com. You can send us a message, and I will try and get back to you as quickly as I can.
Great. And Bungaman already gave us his piece of sage advice for all brothers and tourists looking to get involved. Find yourself a good treasurer. But Mr. Disco Caddy, if you could give your brothers any piece of advice in being involved in getting this whole thing together, what would it be?
I'd have to say, just keep going to meetings. Just, organize with like-minded guys. Put yourself out there. I will say, as a younger guy, especially coming out of the COVID pandemic, it was very, very awkward and uncomfortable to meet new people and to put yourself out there. But once you do it a few times, it becomes very easy. You get to know a lot of different personalities and get a lot of interesting ideas. Speaking of our national conference, I went to that last year, and the quality of the guys there were really phenomenal, So you got to really just put yourself out there and listen to the new interesting voices.
Yeah, that's great. There's a phrase that I hear bandied about other fraternal organizations that are quite a bit older than we are. The old timers tend to say something like, "You get out what you put in." And I think that that's going to be true for any fraternal organization. But with that, I would like to thank the Blackland Prairie Riders for joining us this evening and representing the great state of Texas. If you are interested in joining, please contact their Proton mail address. And with the issues involving the size of the state of Texas, don't be afraid to get a new chapter started in your area. For Pony Express Radio this week, the day will be off for Thanksgiving. I hope all of our listeners are going to be able to enjoy that with friends and family. But be sure to tune in next week, 8 p.m. on Thursdays, and every Monday, 8 p.m. for American Spirits, where, you can get an answer to what is an American in a very academic lens, which you should do to help bolster your own personality. For the Chapter House and Old Glory Club, I am Not Me, Not You. Thanks for joining us, guys. Have a happy Thanksgiving.